Hey, welcome to Pop Goes the Stack, the podcast about emerging tech with zero chill and even less respect for your carefully built stack. Every episode will bring you one step closer to understanding the tech that's about to break your deployment or your will to debug it. So brace yourself. I'm Lori MacVittie, and this week we're going to be diving into multimodal madness. We've got our guest here, Aubrey King, and our occasional, sometimes co-host, Joel Moses. So welcome.
Thanks,
Good
Lori.
to be here, Lori.
All right, awesome. Let's dive in. Let me set the stage, right? I know it's multimodal, but why, right? So it's because, suddenly last month in Fortnite, Darth Vader was backed by AI. So the actual voice of James Earl Jones, real-time conversation. But unfortunately, the security stack was still stuck defending against text payloads like it was, 2005. So really, right, we want to talk about like what it was, how cool it was, because it was absolutely awesome. But what happened, right? This wave of multimodal AI, you've got images, you got audio, you got video, you got sensors all coming in. And what happens when your infrastructure that's built for strings and tokens suddenly faces off against the questionable humor of about 500,000 teenagers? Okay. So obviously, if it could go wrong, it did. You guys have seen the clips, you've read a little bit. I mean, what did you think, happened there?
I thought it was hilarious, actually. I think I told you guys I did quite extensive YouTube research on this because I'm not a Fortnite player. I was a Battlefield player for many, many years. But Fortnite is just too new for me, so I'll let my kids take care of that. But even they laughed, I gotta say, when I showed them what this topic was on. They lost it. Relevant.
Yeah, I like everybody else watched the YouTube videos of Darth Vader cursing people out and responding with some very strange output. And I recognized immediately the elements of prompt injection about getting a model to kind of say what you want it to say by creeping around the edges of the modality of the model. And that's a lesson for all of us to learn. Fortnite came at this based on a voice model that was created for James Earl Jones, which, I want James Earl Jones' voice on everything. My answering machine, I want it on everything. They came up with a great AI model that sounded a whole lot like him and applied it to Fortnite, but they didn't think about what the ramifications were for the inputs for the system to then output in his particular voice. And so now James Earl Jones' estate has to deal with the fact that you could, for at least for a period of time, make James Earl Jones say anything that you wanted to say. And that gives me pause for sure. It does give me a lot of wonderful entertainment on YouTube though, as well.
It did. And I watched because I'd heard about it for days, because I do play Fortnite because kids, grandkids, right, they got, and then, it's a nice tension reliever, let me tell you. And so you're like, this is going to be really cool. They're going to back this with conversational AI, right? This is awesome. With Gemini and ElevenLabs paired together, they're going to provide this in real time. I mean, that's when you think about like most games, you've always had conversations with NPCs. They give you quests, you can buy things from them, they give you information, but it's always very constrained, right? Question and answer driven. You can't go outside the boundaries. This is the first time, and this was a bold move and really cool. They said, hey, let's use conversational AI, no boundaries, which turned out to be kind of the problem, right? It took 1 hour before they had a hot fix, because the first thing people did was, let's make Darth Vader swear, right? These are questionable teenagers and of course creators looking for clicks. So, I mean, they had some kind of security. Nobody puts out AI without some kind of guardrails out there, but it sounds like there were some pieces in the architecture that were missed, because the voice doesn't go straight to Gemini. There is a translator in between, right? It takes a different flow. So,
Yeah, I think the difficulty here is, first of all, I want to point out that Fortnite did at least hide the feature of interactivity behind a parental control item
yes.
to allow voice and written communication with AI systems. So
Mhm.
this had to be
Yeah.
turned on to begin with. So that's good. But I think what really occurred is that they may have engaged their profanity filter on things of one modality, but forgot to engage it on another modality. So you have written, which is a chat interface, right? People are typing things in. That's fairly easy to attach to a filter because it comes in through your own systems. The voice systems, though, would translate and then feed on the backside the model, which would then respond. And so people figured out that if you used certain voice mechanisms, you could sort of bypass the filtering sets. And that's, again, it's one of those things where modality and the fact that we've typically, with most of our applications, we've only dealt with textual input. That is a thing of the past. Now we're dealing with voice input. We're dealing with visual input, image sampling. We're dealing with documents as input. And when you're processing those and you want to filter those, you have to filter those in lots of different ways. You have to classify them in different ways. And they just forgot about that. But they did, to their credit, they did put in a hot fix. But you can still interact with Darth in interesting ways today.
It was interesting to me to find some of the classic LLM. I mean, classic, what, a year and a half old kind
Sure.
of
Right.
hacks that are out there. Saying, how do you say cuff backwards, things like that.
Right.
That ended up kind of working out. And the other thing that I found odd, I wasn't able to really verify that this was authentic, but on Reddit I did find a snippet of code that appeared to be the guardrails that were used for this in the system prompt. And I have to say, they really only cut out 9 words total from what I saw, which
George Carlin would be proud.
yeah, two more than the 7. That's right. Yeah,
They
I could
added some.
I could recite those 7 for
No,
you. Right?
let's
We'll
not.
stay away from that.
I prefer Anthrax's version too, but I mean,
Anyway.
same list, right?
The 7
Yeah.
words you can't say on podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's interesting the fact that you could actually get the model to say something backwards, which would turn into something that would bypass the profanity filter. That means that the output was not filtered, right? So when the response comes back, you also have to run your filters on the response because the response comes after the input chain. So it's it's one of those things where you have to watch both the elements that are coming into the model and the elements that are leaving the model. And a lot of people don't quite understand that this is a highly dynamic system, and so you have to look at both sides of the transaction.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, and take into consideration that in and out may be going to different systems. It's not always just the client. There may be, right, voice processing, image processing, other types of logs, or whatever other systems are involved here, that every time you interact with that model, you should be looking at what it's saying, because you can't just whitelist 7 words. I mean, that's a good start, but there are a million different ways to say things that you shouldn't say. And that's part of the problem with natural language combined with now multimodal, is that we can't control the inputs, right? We used to be able to sanitize, say, okay, you can only these things, but now it's wide open, say
Yeah.
what you want.
And again, these filters also have to work multilingually for systems like
Yes.
Fortnite, right? So that even amplifies the difficulty of the problem. Now, to Fortnite's credit, first of all, they had the AI features hidden behind a parental control item already, which is to their credit. And then I believe they produced a hotfix for this the day after all of these videos began dropping. So at the very least, they were able to recover from that fairly quickly. But by then the damage was done. There were already dozens and dozens of YouTube videos with James Earl Jones saying very inappropriate things. So that's the risks here.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to me. You mentioned multiple languages. One of the more interesting videos I saw, somebody was trying to use an element in the game and asked Darth Vader to describe this element, but also to say some words in Spanish. So they were clearly using multilingual, and
two different languages in one prompt, right?
yeah, exactly, which was quite a bit of confusion. If I was looking at the direction, though, as you mentioned, I did not see a lot of direct prompt injection that was pulled off. To Fortnite's credit, I did see quite a bit of indirect, as we mentioned, which made me immediately go, "Wow, wouldn't you like an AI gateway in there that's omnidirectional? You know, some sort of device that's going to make sure that." Even if it's using agents internally, you know,
Yeah.
we got to make sure we understand both the request and the response from all of the various elements in that program.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I've seen a few examples of like soft prompt injection, like, hey, Darth Vader, I want you to replace all these letters with these letters and all, right? So it was giving it new instructions
Yeah.
about the language itself in order to, right, generate now typically just, right, nonsense, funny things because he's saying nonsense. But one could start crafting these kind of soft prompt injection commands to get it to say things that it shouldn't.
Yeah, increasingly, I think that the filters of the past, the pattern matching of the past, is probably going to have to be replaced by context awareness, by context matching. There's too many different modes. There's too many different languages. Sometimes you're trying to catch intent and not necessarily the pattern of an attack. And so the challenge is pretty high, especially for a multi-user game with a global focus like Fortnite. I'm sure it's something that they are now thinking of quite intently.
Well, that's also, I think, one of the technical details back there is there was no like multi-tenant context, right? Because everything for Vader is processed primarily, right, server side, and multiple people could be interacting. So if you were on a squad and you had 4 people, right, you were playing with, and you actually managed to get Darth Vader on your team, then all 4 people can talk to him. And all 4 people are included in the same context for Darth Vader. So now you have mixed context going on. And we know that the more context and the larger the context gets with LLMs, that causes, right, context drift. It starts dropping things. It gets confused, which makes it even more likely that it's going to say something inappropriate or wrong, right? So you can just overwhelm it at that point.
It did seem that the AI understood topics pretty well. Makes me kind of think that they'll get context eventually. For instance, if you mention certain rebels too much in your conversation, Vader would get angry, leave your party, and start to attack you. That cracked me up the first time I saw that. Whoa, we mentioned, you know, so and so. Oh,
nice.
Oh yeah. Oh, it definitely, right. I love that they did it, even though there's all these missteps, because the first one to do something, there's always missteps, lessons learned, right? We pick that up and we apply them to other situations and move on. But they also showed what's possible. Like this is being able to in real time have this conversation with, you know, just anything in a game is amazing. So now you want more of it, but you also want to see people pick up those lessons learned, like bidirectional, omnidirectional, right? Safeguards, making sure you're sanitizing every way, checking your context. I mean, all of these things that are just as applicable to your corporate chatbot, right? What if I take those lessons I learned from those teenagers and go out to our chatbot and start playing around, right? Will I get the same results?
Yeah.
You know, I would think not, because of course we know how to do security, right? But a lot of people are not thinking about it or haven't architecturally made sure that all the places that need security have security today. And so that's important, because it's not just about games, it's about every system that leverages AI, right, to have those kind of real-time conversations.
That's right. You know, I want to point out that this is actually 2 different AI systems intermixed with each other. One of them is the voice itself, the voice of James Earl Jones by a company called Respeecher out of Ukraine. Highly accurate. I mean, no one has been faulting the quality of the reproduction of James Earl Jones' voice, and that's just one thing. That's built up on a lexicon of lots of different clips from him speaking. And so you're going to see more of those. We've already seen plenty of them, but I think that there's actually going to be kind of an industry built around deep fake voices being used in this particular manner. And looking at the popularity of this thing on Fortnite, I don't think this is the last one they're going to do by any stretch. So I look forward to seeing who else is going to enter Fortnite with an AI voice. But the melding of these two systems together, one which generates the voice itself, and then the other one that provides the interactivity to the voice, those two things mesh together in a new way, and they didn't really think through all of the aspects of that. And so this is kind of a trial balloon for them. I imagine they'll fix it, and we're going to see a lot more of these characters in the future.
Personally, I'm hoping for Jules from Pulp Fiction, Samuel L. Jackson, right?
Okay, I mean, come on, Samuel L. Jackson, like, you know where that goes immediately. Like, do you even want him if they put the guardrails in place so he doesn't talk like Samuel L. Jackson? Like,
you'd find the reverse, people making him say really good things and like trying to help people. And
yeah,
I want Christopher Walken. That's what I'd like to have in gameplay.
Only if he's talking about a pocket watch.
Well, but how far does it stop with games, right? Those voices, right? Could my customer chatbot actually, speak in,
I totally
some
agree.
voice, right?
I've had an interaction with a corporate CISO that actually had his CEO come to him and say, I'm tired of doing my company podcast. What I'd like to do is just give you a script and then have it read out in my voice. Can you develop a model of my voice for briefing the company, which is entirely within the realm of technical feasibility. But the CISO pointed out, and quite rightly to the CEO, if I can put words in your mouth, anyone else can put words in your mouth. So that might not be such a great idea. It makes sense from one perspective. From the other perspective, what if someone creates a false financial briefing from a CEO? And publishes that publicly, and so those types of things, we need to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, like that goes to authenticity. How do we authenticate voice, images, video? I mean, we've been having these conversations since this started.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how are we going to make sure that's actually me or this person they say they are? How do we do that? Right. We can't even apparently get past multimodal inputs to sanitize that. How are we going to do authentication? How are we going to do identity? How are we going to bind all these things together? It's just,
I find your lack of faith disturbing, Lori.
You were waiting for that. You were just waiting for the moment. It's like, I feel prompt injected now. Like,
disturbing.
Oh, it is. It's really hard. And I don't think that organizations today have even clearly gotten just text down, right? We haven't really fully explored that. And we're already seeing agents in production. We're seeing people start playing with agentic AI, which comes after that, where agents start talking to agents, So, all right, we've got none of the answers and we're just going full speed. And that's good, right? Failure teaches us things, but some of these areas can be more risky than others. Like, you don't want your corporate voice saying things it shouldn't, giving poor financial readings. Are we going to end up with, I don't know, status updates are now voice, image, right? How far is this going to go? And we need to get a handle on that security piece, how we look at traffic, how we manage it inside of the architecture, and making sure that we've got all the little points where something could go wrong has some kind of guardrail or, stop sign, like, hey, stop here, let's check.
Yeah. So if we could kind of rewind and talk about what we've learned out of the Fortnite issue. The couple of takeaways that I leave with is, number one, you have to watch the modalities of your input and your output chains. The modalities may change, and if you only have something that samples text and doesn't have the ability to attach to the right point to look at what's in voice data or what's in visual data, you may be missing something. The other one that I learned is that you have to watch the input chain and you have to watch the output chain. Your context is going to be sampled from both sides. So if you're creating filters, like a profanity filter, make sure it is on the input and the output as well. If you're melding two things together, like a system that allows you to manipulate a deep fake voice and attaches a generative AI large language model to it, think about the ramifications of what you're doing first and foremost. If you're supplying something to the general public that you have a duty to protect, say, for example, children, make sure that there are parental guardrails around the use of the feature to begin with. That's what I've learned from it.
Aubrey, what have you learned?
Don't mess with Darth Vader. Okay. No, no, I kid. Really, it just makes me think that we need to continue to evangelize a lot of what I've been talking about with OWASP. People need to understand what the threats are for all of these models and figure out that you're not just talking about things that pass through a firewall anymore. You really have to figure out some other ways to defend against these things, as I said before, in an omnidirectional fashion.
Absolutely. I learned that context is the new perimeter, right? Around, doesn't matter if it's agents, doesn't matter if it's, right, the conversation. It doesn't matter which one. That context is the perimeter, and it always has to be checked in between. And that as these expand and you add multimodal points where you're doing different things and you're not necessarily, right, orchestrating a straight flow that you can predict, that you really need to check in between, right? Omnidirectional, you need to have those security guardrails in place, and you need to teach your kids not to lie about your age so that those parental controls aren't circumvented, right? Because they do that all the time. And I like parental controls. I have used them, but I'm also very aware that a lot of kids are like, yeah, no, I'm 18, whatever, right? And there's nothing we can do to stop them. So, be careful, right? Parents pay attention to what your kids are using, what they're interacting with as well, right? Yeah. Don't just let the system do it for you.
I have altered your model through prompt injection. Pray I don't alter it any further.
I knew this topic was going to go sideways, but that's okay. Yeah. You're scaring me, Aubrey. Stop it.
I had to. You don't know how long I practiced that when I was a kid.
I know. Didn't we all? Unlike the stormtroopers who've never practiced their aim in 40 years now. So, all right. Before we get even further off track, that's a wrap on this episode of Pop Goes the Stack, where the tech is still bleeding edge and your sanity is just a deprecated feature. So if your deployment survived this conversation, congrats, right? You're ahead of the curve for now. But be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or just scream into the void, whatever helps you cope. And we'll be back with more ways emerging tech is rewriting the rules and breaking your stack. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and maybe don't deploy on a Friday.